It's been a little while since I last uploaded an unofficial Homebrew arcade ports video which focuses on retro computers and retro consoles receiving modern day or homebrew releases of popular arcade games which didn't have an original release or had a release which could have been better at the time. Thankfully, of this day and age, modern day tools are getting easier to program games for some of these at times very complex platforms. This is part 3 and today we are checking out several games for a range of different platforms which are either considered as fully complete and 100% playable releases, as well as a couple of beta releases in early development, all of which I have dropped a link for in this video's description. Remember, there are a whole lot more of these homebrew arcade games. If you don't find them in this part, they will either be in part 1 or part 2 of this little series, or will likely be coming in the next video. Anyways, for now, let's take a look at the love that some of these old computers and consoles are getting.
Round 1, fight!
Can you actually believe that somebody gave one of my favourite consoles some love? Yes, you can see it clearly. This is Mortal Kombat 2 working fairly well on the 3DO. The developer of this arcades conversion, which originally released way back in 1996, goes by the name of 3DO HD. Now, let's make this clear. This isn't a finalised product as I'm recording this video, but it's currently in beta, as you can see from this early public release. This game looks amazing visually, and the music and sound effects are incredible too. If you are unfamiliar with the 3DO consoles, let's just say that when it released around 1993 to 1994, it would have cost you in the region of £1,400 in today's money, and it's very obvious why you likely didn't know many people that owned one of these at the time. So anyways, going back to Mortal Kombat 2 for this conversion, this game controls incredibly well, although if you plan on emulating this, the controls can feel a little strange as the original 3DO controller was, shall we say, a little unconventional compared to some other controllers of the era. Hit collision detection is fairly great so far in this public beta release, although there were a couple of times when I was hitting my opponent that it wasn't 100% registering as a hit. We have an options menu, and in true style of sucking at this game to begin with, I opted to play it on the easiest mode. I will leave the download link for this one in the description for you to try out, and if you wonder why there are no fatalities as you play this 3DO release, then just remember this is still a game in its early stages of development and hasn't been incorporated as of yet. Although 3DO HD has said that he will be including this in the final release. When I put my arcade ports video together for a Green Beret, or Russian Attack as it's known in some parts of the world, I was very much surprised that of all home computers to receive an arcade home computer version, the Commodore Amiga didn't actually get one at the time. Now, Green Beret is a game that I love playing in the arcade as much as I did on my C64 back in the day. It's one of those games which I spent more time on than other games. As for this Amiga version then, well, this is plain and simply superb. What else can I say? The final release of this version by the developer who goes by the name of Dante Retro Dev over on itch.io released this one back in 2022, and to my knowledge this game is very much a final release and it plays terrific too. Now, if you were an Amiga fan, you will likely either have real hardware or at least a mini Amiga Retro Games Limited console. Whatever you own, this can be played as there is an ADF as well as a WHD load version of this release, and for the game itself, the developer used the awesome Scorpion engine to develop this game, which is a favourite development tool today for producing Amiga games. This game controls really nicely, and I will add that using a CD32 controller would be better as it will let us have an extra button to fire missiles or flamethrowers rather than using a keyboard to do this. It's a really nicely designed game and the colours used are impressive here too. I managed to make it to stage 3 and can say that this game is a joy to play and it's very faithful to the arcade game itself. The developer even added music options where we can use the original music or Nintendo NES music. We even have a couple of gameplay modes added into the mix too. You can download this conversion for free, links in the description.
Mission 1.
If you ever wondered if Metal Slug was able to be ran on a Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis, here is your proof that it can be done. Now, honestly, I'm not sure if this is ever going to be finished. The coder of this version, as well as the Atari ST conversion by the same person, has been quiet for the last few years, but that doesn't go to say that this game will never get finished at some point. Admittedly, the developer, known as Masters over on itch.io, has admitted that the Mega Drive release is a little something of a nightmare regarding the console's 64KB of video RAM, and so producing what he has produced already is actually fairly impressive. You can play this release, which was released as a demo back in 2022, but I will warn you that it is buggy and the difficulty level is pretty much nightmarish. You will also notice that as you play through Metal Slug, you will not completely die. As the life counter reaches 0, you will continue to have infinite lives. It scrolls fairly well and it isn't bad at all for what it is. Now, obviously, the original version was incredibly detailed with fairly large sprites used, and the author of this release goes as far as to admit that the Mega Drive version of this is a seriously tough challenge. The game itself plays as it should, where we can shoot, throw grenades and shoot upwards and downwards too. I think I might keep an eye on the potential progress of this conversion. With some fine tuning, this could be a superb homebrew game for the Sega Mega Drive. Bomb Jack released for arcades back in 1984 and was and still is a popular game. It was ported to many home computers at the time, which I covered in my arcade port series, but the Atari 8-bit computers never received a copy of this originally. Not to confuse this release with the 2008 Atari XL XE conversion, this more recent conversion by Atari Age Forums user Shanty77 released a much more improved version back in 2022. And of course, like many others in this video, it's a totally free game to download too. Now, many 8-bit computer versions released originally during the 1980s were fairly questionable in most cases. However, given the Atari 8-bit computer limitations, this is one awesome release which I highly recommend playing. It is a fully playable and complete version of the game too, so what we have here is actually a finalized release. Its controller response is great and the gameplay is very fluid with some very good music in the background of gameplay, which sounds very similar to the original 1984 game. Now, I will remind you that the developer actually chose to name this game as Gaysec. Likely he or she didn't want to get into trouble over copyright issues, but I'm not entirely sure with that. Not to say that the original Commodore 64 home conversion of Toki was bad when it released on cartridge by Ocean back in 1991, but it was by no means perfect, and that is exactly what Toki Remastered is currently attempting to achieve. This is a currently active development for a new version of Toki, and as it stands, the first stage is 100% playable. The developer, David Bottino, who is actually a journalist for Italian magazine Zap, began working on this remaster in 2023, and judging from the gameplay itself, then yes, this is a major improvement over what you would have had originally for the Commodore 64. We could easily start by comparing how Toki originally looked. The C64 1991 game had crosses for eyes, for example, whereas here Toki has much more defined eyes with colours used which are more like how Toki should look in the arcade, rather than the version that Ocean gave us in 1991 with its grey face. It's not just Tokyo has had more definition added though, it's all of the other enemy sprites too pretty much. Bottino is aiming to have much more true to arcade experience with Toki Remastered, including a soundtrack which sounds more like the original arcade game itself, and generally better gameplay mechanics. This demo mainly features a much more improved sprites, whereas for now in this release, the backgrounds largely remained untouched. As of recording this video, the demo was released in December 2024, although a full version of this is actually coming fairly soon, I believe. You can read the full details on what this game is aiming for with the link in the description. One of Sega's best loved beat-em-ups eventually came to the Neo Geo this year, which is 2025 of recording this video. The Neo Geo is getting a fair bit of love recently with its other arcade conversions too, including the awesome Shinobi port, which I talked about in another one of these unofficial ports videos. Interestingly, Hoffman, who developed this Neo Geo release, partly reverse engineered the original arcade game, as well as adding his own parts into the mix. What we have here is a superb version of Golden Axe, which I am playing using the Neo Geo CD version. It is also available as a free download for Neo Geo MVS and AES2. The most striking feature with this release is of course the audio. The Neo Geo CD version of this sounds just incredible. Of course you will get purists who consider the original sound better, but Hoffman has made this as perfect as possible, as well as freshening things up with a touch of new music and sound effects. It plays just as good as to be expected. We get a choice of the three main characters and the gameplay is absolutely flawless. This ranks way up there with the Shinobi game for Neo Geo, which was recently released too. And that's it for today's video. So like I said in the introduction, if you missed out on parts 1 and part 2 of this little series, do check those out. I'll put a link in the comments section so you can watch those if you've not already. Anyways, until next video comes, thanks for watching.